Welcome to The Vault at 201 North Broadway, podcast for innovators and problem solvers talking all things small business, entrepreneurship, and workforce development. We are so excited for this special guest joining us today. He's a great community partner, always willing to help out, owns a manufacturing company that distributes internationally, is involved in many organizations across the state. Bryan Wood, president of Wood's Powr-Grip.
Thank you to the Small Business Development Center for sponsoring The Vault at 201 North Broadway. The Small Business Development Center provides you with free one-on-one counseling, business plan assistance, marketing research, financial projection assistance, and more to small businesses.
So we're going to dive right in. Bryan, we have lots of questions for you today, so we'll just get into it. Just out of curiosity, did you grow up in Yellowstone County?
No, actually, I grew up in Montana, but not in Yellowstone County. I grew up in Roosevelt County, northeastern part of the state, in Wolf Point. Oh. So, and I think you grew up in northeastern or eastern Montana as well. And
I grew up in northeast. I'm from Scobie. So,
you're from Scobie?
Northeast Montana.
Okay, so right down the road from us.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. And then Lorene grew up in Wolf Point, Leicester.
Yeah, Lorene Heinz.
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah, as a matter of fact, I remember the Heinz name, because I graduated with one of her brother-in-laws or something.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Cool.
So no, in Montana, but not in Yellowstone County.
Okay. So then, do you want to tell us a little bit about Wolf Point and what, because I think you guys started out in Wolf Point, if I'm not mistaken, if you want to tell our listeners.
We did. And geez, how much time do you have? Because I'd love to start with like how our company started. And, I love talking about my grandfather because, he started the company and it's just an amazing story. If you don't mind me diving into that.
That's what we want.
That's what we want here.
Okay. All right. Well, I feel kind of like I'm hogging your time because I love telling this story. But
it's all about you. That's what we're here for.
It's never a hug of a time.
So my grandfather grew up on a little homestead between Wolf Point and Scobie.
Oh, nice.
He went to high school in Wolf Point. Mm-hmm. Graduated in 1928 and really wanted to be an engineer, mechanical engineer. He just loved making things, fixing things. And so, they didn't have a lot of money. Nobody did in those days, especially, if you lived on a homestead or whatever. They found the money to send him to the University of Minnesota so he could study to be an engineer.
Oh, wow.
But as we all know, 1 year later, 1929, the Depression hits. So unfortunately, the economics of the time kind of forced him back home, and jobs were scarce. But he lucked out. He had a reputation as being very mechanical, and he got on with this big construction company called Morrison Knutson. They were a nationwide company, and they hired him to do maintenance on like all their equipment and stuff. So they moved him around. They had big projects. This was a company that did like the Hoover Dam and, projects like that, big projects.
And in that time, that was so cutting edge. Like those were big things that were happening.
Oh, absolutely.
That we all still reference now.
San Francisco Bay Bridge, they did that. Later on, they did the Atlantic, or not Atlantic, but Alaskan pipeline, those types of projects. But even, being a big company like that, it kind of started to dry up eventually, so, the Depression was a scary time. I'm sure glad we didn't have to go through it. But so we moved back to Northeast Montana and went to work for Fort Peck Dam, because that was a New Deal project at the time. And because of his skill set, he got on as a mechanic, working to maintain the equipment and stuff there. And
really cool. Down up there.
Yeah. And it's fun to know that, that you had family that helped.
Had a piece in it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But, and then, of course, World War II was starting up, and in 1944, about the time that the dam project was wrapping up, he got drafted, and so you think about it, and he graduated in 28, so he's like 34, 35 years old, married with a couple of kids. I mean, that's just unheard of today. You'd think of to get drafted at that age, and so he got drafted into the Navy, and he again was put to work as a mechanic on a supply ship called the USS Cairn. And, he was in charge of like the engines and the propulsion systems and stuff like that. And so he served his time there, and then he came back to Northeast Montana, got a job as a mechanic, knew he didn't want to just work for someone for very long. So in 1947, he actually bought this old grocery store building in Oswego. And,
of all places.
Yeah, of all places.
And that's a tiny, tiny town, I'm assuming.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it's almost non-existent anymore.
It's
I mean,
now just a bar on the side of the highway.
Okay, I get it. I'm from like southeast Montana, so we have some of those too. Yeah.
right. And, but back in those days, these were more of communities, because people didn't travel as much as they do now,
Yeah.
like to go get their groceries and stuff. Like now it's no big deal to go 30 miles to get groceries. Back in those days, it was a bigger deal. So, he dug a basement in Wolf Point, and he moved this building there. And this is going to be the original company building, but
He moved the building?
he moved the building on a flatbed
Holy
trailer.
buckets.
Yep. I mean, it's not a huge building. It was an old like general store, grocery store type thing. But and it remained part of our building until we moved at a point in 1990. But he dug the basement so he had someplace to live.
Yeah.
with my grandma and my dad and my aunt. He bought some World War II surplus equipment, lathe and a mill, and he started a machine shop in the main floor, an automotive repair shop. It's actually called Wood's Auto Electric is what it was called. So, he specialized in like rebuilding engines. He was one of the only places in that area, Northeast Montana, that had a dyno, what they call a dyno, so that people could bring their vehicles in and he could measure like horsepower and stuff like that.
wow.
how they're
Wow.
running. Yeah. But part of the process of rebuilding engines back in those days was what they call lapping valves, or seating the valve to the head of the engine. And it was a kind of a cumbersome process. You'd have to use like a lapping compound, and you'd have to somehow attach to the top surface of the valve and then spin it in and kind of seat it into the engine head. And there really wasn't a good way to do that. So he said, I'm going to make this little suction cup with a pump on it so you can draw a high vacuum level and get a good grip on the head of this and spin it in there and really get it seated well. And so that was how we got into the suction cup business.
But like fixing a problem that no one had like thought of because he's working on some little thing in a vehicle that takes a lot of time.
Yeah,
And
exactly. You're trying to just make your life easier.
Yeah.
But then you're like making everyone's life.
And then it's revolutionary.
Yeah. Well, that's the odd part is, I don't know how. I mean, obviously it's a long time ago. Some of the details are fuzzy, but it's somehow caught on where like people like Briggs and Stratton and Tecumseh started ordering them from him, so
Wow.
they could give them to their technicians because it just was a far better way to grip the valve. And so he had to, get a couple of buddies to come in and help him make these on the side while he's still doing his automotive business and stuff like that. And then eventually someone says, you should make a bigger one of those with that pump on it like that for handling glass, because they really don't have a good way of doing that. Now you either use like gloves and you grip the side of the glass to try not to get cut, or they had like suction cups that you would put on the face, and then maybe there's a lever you flip over.
Oh, okay.
You maybe see them like on old pencil sharpeners
Yeah.
or something,
To get them to section to the wall or the table or something.
Or like the apple peeler kind of thing.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And so, and with those, you never knew if it was attached properly or if it was going to pop off, if you're losing your vacuum because there's no indicator or anything. So he kind of experimented a little bit, and he made a bigger suction cup with this pump action on it. And it had a little indicator so you could tell when you had a good vacuum level or if for some reason you were losing your vacuum level. That's just kind of how our suction cup got, developed. It took off from there. Exactly.
Wow.
It's kind of a roundabout way. Someone said, "Hey, yeah, that would work great for glass," and so that's what he did, and then he actually applied for a patent on that in 1963, I think, like December of 63, because he said, this is starting to take off. People are wanting these.
Yeah.
And they were expensive at the time, of course,
Right,
because it's just
him and some buddies making them.
exactly, and probably not the most efficient processes and everything, but still, it was just such an innovation as far as safety and for the industry, because they didn't have anything. Whenever people don't think about it, whenever you're grabbing a window or something and you got to put it into a hole, you're putting it into a wall, and you can't hold it by the edges anymore.
And you can't hold it like this. Really.
Right. You got to grip the face of it, and so you need something that you got a secure hold on that, and so for the tradespeople that were doing it every day, it was expensive, but it was worth it. Mm-hmm. And so in 1964, then he incorporated the company, and it wasn't until 1966, actually March of 66, that his patent got approved.
Yeah, it takes a while.
Yeah. And so, they obviously had been making the suction cups and marketing them in that, in between time. And then it just kind of grew from there, I guess. He made different sizes for different purposes. And late in the 60s, he made some that you could hang from a crane, and they were battery powered.
Oh, wow.
Which, today
that was cutting edge.
Yeah.
I think like your grandpa, it sounds like, saw so much, from World War II to then the '60s. There's just so much life that you live and see, like all of that innovation and all those things happening. So with that, did he initially, when he started that, was it just Montana companies that were purchasing these suction cups?
Well, that's a funny story too. No, he actually started. He had a couple of guys. I don't know how he knew them, but they would load up the trunks of their car and head out and try and sell.
He had like some salesmen.
Yeah, all over the country.
I love that.
But their primary target was people who would, continue to buy resellers, distributors.
Mm-hmm.
They'd go and try and get their business, and eventually, he kind of did develop relationships with some of the distributors we still sell to. It's amazing that we still sell to some of the same people that they set up back in those days. But and it's funny because we had a letter we kind of like to look at once in a while from who was the largest distributor to like the glazing trade at the time.
Yeah.
And they said, we're sorry, these are just too expensive. We don't think we'll be able to sell them, And so fortunately not everybody thought that. And a short time later, they did pick up the product and were very successful with it and sold a bunch of them for us. But anyway, I think I've kind of strayed from your question.
Oh, no, you didn't. No, that's great because we were on at the 60s. So he incorporated, the patent came through.
Right.
And then what? And so also with that, he was still operating out of that facility, right, that he had built originally, or did it get some modifications?
No, we're still operating out of that facility. So in 1970 is when my dad got involved. He came back. He was a journalist, and he worked all over the country too. He'd worked in Billings for the Gazette. He'd worked right out of college. He'd worked at the Butte Standard, which he loved. I don't know, he was single and he just loved it there. But
Living in Butte.
In 1970 he came back into the business because essentially my grandpa was a tinkerer and he just liked to make things and he didn't like to run a business, and there was getting to be more
Business.
people
Yeah.
involved. Yeah, and it's like, this really isn't what I want to do. I want to just
Make the things.
Yeah.
Exactly. I'll come back here and I'll kind of try and come up with some new things, and I'll make machines to try and make it so that it's more efficient to make some of the things that you're making, and that's kind of where I want to be, And so Dad ran the business then from 1970 until, he retired in 2002.
Oh, okay.
Wow.
So for quite a while.
That's awesome.
But so I think we were talking about in the late 60s, he developed the first battery powered vacuum lifter for like suspending from a crane for lifting heavier loads. And again, you just didn't see a lot of battery powered portable equipment at that time. It was today it's very common, but back then it was, like you said, maybe a little bit cutting edge. And, but it allowed them to take a piece of glass and hoist it up 10 stories without running having to run an electrical cord or something like that, and
worry about it dropping. I mean, like when all these like big buildings were starting to get built, and
exactly, yep, yeah. So again, then my dad took over. He took over the business side of things in 1970.
But Grandpa was still tinkering.
Oh yeah, for sure. I wish we still had him today because he just would sit and think about something and then he'd just go build it. And it's like, I don't know how you do that. How you just kind of build it in your mind first and then go out on the shop floor and have that skill set to craft it out there as well.
And know how to make it.
Right. I can't do either.
Well, did your dad did he have any of that, like wanting to build, tinker, and like?
To some extent, maybe not quite to the level of my grandpa. My dad he didn't mind doing the business side of things, a little more than grandpa. And he wasn't opposed to getting his hands dirty either, of course, As a matter of fact, I think he enjoyed it at times, but he wasn't like, I just don't want to deal with the business side of things like my grandpa was. And so it was a good kind of business partnership, you might say. And they're both, just really easygoing guys anyway. So,
which is helpful.
Exactly.
In family businesses.
Yeah, and then my dad just had the one sister who wasn't involved in the business. She was an archaeologist or anthropologist, and her and her husband, and they moved to Alaska after college, and he became a professor at the University of Alaska, and they would travel all over the world and go to these digs and stuff, and that was what they enjoyed doing, and so he ran the business and she did her thing, and it's kind of.
So your grandpa, started the business and was more of the maker, and then your dad came in and ran more of the business side of it. So where do you enter in this continuation?
Okay, so well, I enter where my parents are trying to keep me out of trouble in high school, and it's like, well, if you're not in sports, you come to work, and so you just anyone who grew up on a farm or with a family business or anything, your parents expect you. That's how they babysit you. Is they make you come to work. And keep
Labor.
Exactly.
I get
Is it babysitting if it's your own kids, though?
Yeah. Well, maybe not. True. Well, they bring you there and let somebody else babysit.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe that's what it is. I don't know.
Right, but there's tasks you can do even as a young
definitely.
kid.
So eventually I made it through high school, went to college, and didn't really know what I wanted to do while I was in college. I didn't know if I really wanted to go build suction cups, maybe not the most glamorous thing in the world, but, I did have an emotional attachment because I worked there, grew up with it, and I actually got married in college, so I got married young, and my wife and I kind of like, well, it's an opportunity to kind of do something that I know, and I know I enjoy. I know the people, I know the culture, and stuff. So after college, my folks did open up an opportunity for me. I came back and I took over the quality control program.
Oh, awesome. Very important.
Yes, I was just going to say
It is super important part to make sure that everything's going. Real quick, where'd you go to college?
I went to college in Havre.
Okay.
Northern. I was Northern at the time, MSU Northern now or whatever, yeah. But, and quality systems have changed so much since that time. Let's say I graduated from college in 1988. So when I came back, it was very regimented, like you would go around and you would actually inspect parts at each station, several times a day and stuff. And it's changed, where, people do their own inspections now, and it's just better processes. But that's how it was at the time. And I did that for a few years, and I kind of, you wear more than one hat anyway in a small business. And so
Cross-train.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, I was kind of doing some sales too, helping out with that. And then I kind of slid into that full time, more or less, where I started running the sales end of things. And I actually did that till my dad retired in 2002. And then by that time, there was actually myself, and I had two brothers that were involved in the business. And so we kind of, succession's always an interesting thing,
Yes, we have been wanting to talk. Yeah.
Talk about it more. So we'll ask that question for you in a little bit.
Okay. We were able to, I think, carve out our niches within the company. I was appointed as president, and one brother took over the production side of things, and the other one at that time was more on the financial accounting side of things.
Oh, okay.
And you guys were still operating in Wolf Point, right, at this point?
Oh, so I guess I should back up a little bit. No, actually, we moved to Laurel in 1990.
Okay.
So shortly after I graduated from college, and even at the point where I graduated from college in 1988, we were outgrowing our facility. We were in the original grocery store building that we'd added on to 3 times, I think.
Okay, wow, yeah.
And then plus we were renting another building that was cross town or whatever that we were doing some other stuff in. And we knew we just needed to get all under one roof, and we needed something that was a little less chopped up and a little more efficient. And we actually looked at building a facility in Wolf Point and staying there. Because we grew up there, and our families were there and stuff. But the more it was a tough decision, because the community, and some of the community leaders really did rally around us and help try and come up with a way to finance, that type of thing, building a building there and keep us there. So, I really can't say anything negative about the community and how they treated us or anything like that. Mm-hmm. But the more we looked at it, and again, this is late 80s. We're just coming off a little bit of an oil boom over in eastern Montana, and property values were down a little bit. So do you really build something when if you look around the state, there's some decent facilities available for, 30, 40 cents on the dollar compared to building at the time. And
you didn't want to take the grocery store with you?
No. we tacked on enough other structures that it would have been a little more difficult. To move at that. But it's funny because the basement under the grocery store where was the original living quarters had become what we called our molding room. We molded all our pads down there.
Oh, nice.
So we were even using that. But anyway, we my dad, he did a lot to try and keep us in Wolf Point. But then he started thinking too, all right, if I build a structure of this size in Wolf Point, and things don't work out. You never know.
Yeah.
What's the resale going to be? Are we going to have
Yeah,
trouble?
what's your return on it?
Exactly. Because especially when you start looking around the state right now, and there's several open or empty facilities, and kind of scares you a little bit. And
Yeah.
so he looked at several different communities. We wanted to stay in the state, and we ended up finding this building in Laurel that was 30,000 square feet at the time, and we knew there was going to be a lot of renovation that we had to do, and we started on that, and about 6 months before we started moving, and then, like I say, in 1990, we kind of transitioned everything from Wolf Point down to Laurel, and that was a difficult time. I'd say we were about 60 employees at the time, and about half of them
Made the transition.
Yeah. Yep. And that's tough because we were really close with a lot of our employees, especially being a small town like that.
Yeah.
But it just didn't make sense not to look for a larger community, to continue on in, especially, and there were benefits we knew we would experience by coming to a larger community, and there were some that we experienced that we didn't realize.
Yeah.
One of the things that was difficult in Wolf Point was attracting technical people like engineers and stuff like that, because we were starting to get where we had more engineers that we were bringing in to design product and stuff like that. But the freight costs were so much lower when we moved down here. I mean, we had one freight company that we dealt with out of Wolf Point, Bob's Pickup and Delivery, it was called.
Bob.
Yeah.
Gotta love Bob.
Yeah. I think they're based out of Sydney, or I can't remember for sure. But you were paying full rate on everything, because they would haul it to Billings, and then they would broker it out to another freight company. And so when we got here, we was like, gosh, there's companies actually competing for our business and offering us discounts.
Next thing, this.
Yeah. Exactly. And next thing we know is, gosh, we're saving enough on freight. It almost pays for our building. So this, it turned out to be a good decision in a lot of ways. But it was a tough time. It really was. And staffing back up and getting people trained up, we left a lot of tribal knowledge behind in Wolf Point. People had been with us a long time and really knew how to diagnose problems with the product and stuff like that. And so it was taxing, but we got through it.
And all of you guys moved then, the family?
Yeah. So my two brothers were still in college at that time. But my mom and dad and I and we all moved with the company, and I can't remember how many semi-loads full of equipment, but we'd move like one department at a time, kind of, and then get it up and running, and then move another one, and finally, I think, it's been a long time ago, but I think we ended up pulling out of town at like 9 o'clock at night, and it's 300 miles.
It's a ways away.
And so we didn't get into town till really late. It was a long summer.
And just like a lot of back and forth, because you can only fit so much in a semi.
Yeah, exactly. So we got through it, but I wouldn't want to do it again.
Right? You're like, I'm good.
We're good.
Yeah.
Have you expanded on the space now that you're the one that you're in?
Yes, actually, we've more than doubled our footprint.
Holy buckets.
Over time. We've had a couple of expansions that, one right before my dad retired, I think in 2001, and then the most recent one would have been in 2015.
Oh, okay.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So the building itself now is, 60-some thousand square feet on the level, and then most of our offices are on the second floor and stuff. So.
Yeah. So when creating and developing, expanding that space, what was important to you? How did you figure out, what you were going to expand on? What portion of the departments were going to grow?
Oh gosh, it's not something you just wake up in the morning and
You're
decide.
like, I'm going to expand today.
So it's something we've kind of been monitoring for quite some time as to where you need more space and how you can shuffle things around to best utilize if you do put in some new space. Because both times that we did that, we end up completely revamping our production flow to better utilize the new space and
Be more efficient. And
exactly, yeah. So you just watch. I mean, certain areas are growing more than others, or you have a desire to bring in some equipment that is going to take up some some floor space, and so you need to accommodate that.
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Your guys' facility is very stunning and clean and nice. Oh. We did a tour a couple of years ago, and it was just so cool to see, like, it's so big and just how everything's laid out. And
well, and I have to give my dad credit for that. That was kind of his pet peeve is, everything needed to stay clean.
Mm-hmm.
And then we've kind of got into what's called lean manufacturing. And
super important. We also house the Montana Manufacturing Extension Center here, and they do the lean manufacturing workshop. So if you are a manufacturer out there, it's important to know that. I just wanted to plug that in since you mentioned it, because we go into some places and I'm like, boy, oh boy.
Yeah, that Lane does that for you down here. Yeah, he's a great guy. But one of their pillars is just cleanliness, because you really can't tell if a machine is leaking oil or not operating right if it's dirty. I mean, if you got to have clean space, or you're not even going to be able to tell if the machine's starting to kind of
deteriorate.
Exactly. Yeah.
If it's just dirty, or the machine did that today.
It already looks like it's deteriorating.
Yeah. Just don't look at my office.
There's not manufacturing happening in there, so you're all right, right?
That's right. Yes.
So we kind of touched on it a little bit. Succession, kids taking over the business. Do you have your children working in the business?
I do. I have 2 daughters, and I've been fortunate enough to have both of them come back and work in the business. My oldest daughter, Katie, she actually went to school to be an RN, and she did work in the medical field for a while, and then I had an opportunity in our human resources, and I thought she would be a good fit, and I talked to her about it, and she said she'd be willing to give it a try, and it's worked out well. I think hopefully I can hang on to her, because I think she's been a great asset for us.
Yeah.
Katie's awesome. She's such a sweetheart.
Yeah. Oh. And then my younger daughter, Kelsey, I knew we were going to have a need in accounting, just, because we were going to have some retirements coming up there and stuff. And so, and she's good with numbers, and I said, "Do you ever think about going into accounting?" And she said, "Yeah, I'll give it a try." And she came back. She got her degree, and she came back and worked under our accountant at the time for a few years, and kind of then took over that side of things. And it's great having somebody you trust, handling that part of the business.
It's a very important part, and you definitely need somebody to trust.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. Yeah. And she's extremely frugal and everything else. So it's a good fit.
She's also very sweet.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah. It's pretty remarkable that you have this business that's, in its 4th generation in the family. That is remarkable.
Yeah. It is interesting at times, obviously, family businesses come with their own challenges.
Yes.
But it's a blessing as well. Of course, I'm very thankful for what I have, and I'm hoping that it'll continue on, and my kids and maybe nieces and nephews or whatever that decide to come back into the business have some of the same opportunities that I've had. So we'll see.
I would like to pick another spot on the timeline, have you share. So you talked about when your grandpa was still running it, and then your dad, you had distributors, I'm assuming mostly in the U.S.?
Yeah.
When did you finally cross that international threshold?
I couldn't tell you an exact year off the top of my head, but it actually would have been in the 70s where we started doing some exporting. And we had a bit of a niche product. We had a patent, and patents last, domestically 25 years, and then nobody else can repatent it, but you're not protected against competition anymore. But through going to trade shows and just developing our brand name and stuff, we were approached by some distributors in other countries. One in Australia, I think, early on, Bremer Glass Supply, and they took on the product, and then interestingly enough, then there was in England a gentleman there who had a distribution company. We developed a relationship with them, but then interestingly enough, a fellow by the name of Holger Kramp, who was like a head engineer for our main competitor, Pankoki in Germany, started his own distribution company, and he came to us and said, "Hey, I know a little bit about this. Why don't you let me sell your product?" And it worked out great. He's Glass Technique is still, obviously he's not involved in the company anymore, but still a good distributor of ours. And so it just that's kind of how it developed, is a lot of times just by building your brand name. We were approached, and we were approached by a lot of companies that we said, no, you're just not a good fit for us. If all you want to do is maybe sell on price, if you want to just, take the easy way out where all you do is just try and have the lowest cost product, that's probably not us. And we need somebody who's going to, stand behind our product and service it and that sort of thing. So we have to be kind of careful, as well as we, once we develop a relationship with a distributor, we've been very loyal, and I think they appreciate that. So, we have to be careful about overlapping territories and stuff like that. Yeah,
but to have that, I think, is so unique, especially like in the 70s, to then be globally exporting your product out of Montana.
Yeah, I mean, it was in its infancy and a small part, but by the 80s, when we started dealing more, like when Holger started up his company and stuff, it really started growing as a part of our business. So now I think we export like 30 to 35% normally, is about where we're at.
Okay. And so with your products, do you guys do mostly everything internal? Are there any things that you do that you outsource externally and then bring in?
Well, we do a lot internally, and that's largely just because of where we're located at, I think, and I guess that would be maybe one of the disadvantages of manufacturing in Montana or any rural area, is you just don't have as many support manufacturers in the area. Like, so I'll come back to kind of your question, but so like if you have a component within your product that needs special processing, say like anodized or something like that, you're probably going to have to ship it somewhere, get that done, unless you take it on yourself and start doing it, which you just can't do that with every process, but which adds expense, obviously, and it adds time to your build. But we do, and it kind of surprises a lot of people, I think, when they come from traditional manufacturing environments, in more urban settings. We're more like vertically integrated, where we do a lot of different processes within, our building. Over the years, some of those processes we have found can be done more efficiently with by people who have, just the right equipment to do it. We were operating off of, homemade equipment, or maybe not state of the art, you might say. But we still do most of the processing within our walls, I guess. Yeah,
which is really cool.
That's awesome.
I heard you guys make your own boxes. You guys do that stuff?
Oh, yeah, cardboard boxes. Yeah, we do. And cardboard boxes are kind of interesting. You have to buy them in such high volume to get a good price. And when
because they're not cheap.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Like
and when you're using a lot of different size boxes, it's hard to buy every size in large volume. Plus, it takes up a lot of space. So and this is one of I'll give my younger brother Brad, who's our production manager, credit for. He's just he's always like, well, we could buy this and just do it ourselves. And I'm like, well, let's hold on. I got to think about that, and I'll think about it. He'll be, come on. And so finally he pulled the trigger and he went and bought this box maker, and we just buy bales of cardboard and we make the boxes as we need them. So yeah.
That's awesome. I thought that was super funny because someone was like, yeah, they just need different sizes. And so they just started making their own because it ended up being a more efficient, cheaper option for them. Right. And I was like, well, look at that. Innovation.
I do remember seeing that when we toured, and it was like just the stack of them, which is cool. So how long from start to finish does it take to do like one of the suction cups?
Oh, that's a good question because there's the molding process, and then there's some machining, some parts that get machined, and then it all comes together into an assembly. The assembly itself doesn't take long. Obviously, we assemble several. I'd have to go back and I'd have to kind of look at what our turnover is on each of those inventory items to tell you, from start to finish what we figure. But I'd say no more than. Because we try not to, again, going back to the lean manufacturing, try not to do huge batches of things and keep things. So normally I'd say a week to 2 weeks, from the time we start machining or molding till it gets all the way through all the processing and through assembly. And sometimes it actually seems to get assembled, packaged, and sits waiting for shipping arrangements and stuff. I think longer than it takes to go
through the process of it. Yeah. My weird question is, how many windows do you think you've saved from falling?
A lot.
Yeah, I think, obviously we do feel like we've made the industry much safer.
Absolutely.
And prevented a lot of accidents. And this is something that we talked about a little bit, or I talked to, some folks a little bit about at the manufacturing days is when it comes to export, a lot of countries that don't have a well-developed safety culture or have inexpensive labor, they're tough markets for us because, our product does make handling glass safer and easier, which isn't always the priority in less developed countries. So we kind of have to watch certain markets and until they reach a certain point in development or, a desire for, a more safer process, they can be a tough market for us. So Europe is obviously our biggest export market, but we have a lot of competition, and it gets to be more and more all the time where there's more European manufacturers are making similar products. And obviously there is product coming in from lower cost countries, primarily Asia. And they're, a lot of those distributors we turned down, they're, turning to the Asian lower cost products because that's what they want to do anyway. They just want to sell on price.
And low cost for everything.
Yeah, exactly.
So what are some of the other products that you guys have that you make?
Oh, gosh. So most of what we make is geared around materials handling. Now, that being said, we did make a small acquisition last summer where we bought a company out of Wisconsin that specializes in tools for windshield installation and repair. So we do make windshield repair kits, like where you'd use to repair chips and windshields and stuff like that. And we sell the resins and
awesome.
We package the resins and stuff like that for that, as well as we build and sell products to make handling the windshields easier. Like in the field, they do a lot of the replacement in the field anymore, and they just want to send one technician. So one of the patented products that came along with this acquisition was an item that it uses our suction cups. That's why it was kind of a good marriage for us. It was good integration anyways, because this product, it attaches to the side light on your car, and then the other end of it attaches to the windshield and allows one person to lift the windshield, because the side light on the car is sporting most of the weight.
Oh, wow.
And install it by themselves. And so that's kind of something newer for us. We're trying to still get organized with some of that, but it's going okay.
That's cool. And like kind of into the glass, but adding more benefit to others, especially like when workforce becomes, you only have one technician. If you wanted to send two, you only have one anyways. Which brings me to some other questions I had for you. So you guys do have a lot of different things within your organization. Would you say you do a lot of internal training, or you like engineers you're hiring, but what does that look like for you guys?
So yeah, obviously the technical skills like engineering, we hire those, but then there's a lot to learn once you get on the job. Just no matter what you graduate from college with, what kind of degree, when you get to whoever your first employer is, there's a lot to learn as far as that's specific to their operation. But as far as like in production, it's a lot of internal training. We like to hire, say, machinists that have some experience. We have several welders, and we actually have a quite extensive weld training program with the, internal training program. So those, I think most of our welders we have hired for other reasons, and then they've kind of transferred into the welding and learned the trade and internally, and so. You mentioned a little bit earlier about Manufacturing Day. You are very involved across the state as a large voice for manufacturing, if I'm not mistaken. And what is that? Like, tell us a little bit about that. I never consider myself a large voice.
In a good way. Yeah. In a good way.
But no, it's something that's been kind of fun for me, because it gets me out from my little microcosm, because otherwise I kind of don't realize what other manufacturers are doing and stuff. And so by being involved with like the Montana State Chamber and the Montana Manufacturing Association, it's allowed me to have more contact with other businesses, whether they're manufacturers or not, and just kind of learn from what other people are doing, as well as advocate for manufacturing. I mean, I am a huge believer in that being a great economic driver, because you look at, and I use this example over and over again, but you look at countries like Germany or Japan, similar in size to Montana geographically, but they're economic powerhouses just because they focus on manufacturing. What do you think of when you think of those two countries? You think of manufacturing. Obviously, it's very different when you look at the labor perspective, because Germany has like 80 million people, and Japan 120 million or whatever. Yep.
We're over 100. We're over a million now here in Montana.
Yes,
we're getting there. There's still more cows than us, but
and some of us might think that's plenty, but yeah.
But I think that brings up a good point of being, a voice in that, and making sure that the things that are happening in Montana, we advocate to keep you guys in the state and attract more.
Yeah. So my experience with manufacturers in the state who are, I'm going to say, kind of native Montana, is they're going to make it work in Montana because that's where they want to be. That's just they'll figure out a way. Even though you don't have some of the support services you would have if you were in Cleveland or Los Angeles or some larger urban center. But the tougher thing is convincing, say, people who don't normally do business in a rural setting like this, that it's possible, because there are extra challenges. But then along with those challenges, of course, I'd say we're blessed with maybe a good work ethic in this area. I always thought, because it is like a more rural setting, there's more of a community feel. No matter where you go, you kind of run into coworkers, and
you'll know someone who knows someone. We always joke about that because we're all from tiny eastern Montana.
Exactly, and so you're kind of there's a little more incentive to pull your weight, I think, and I think that helps our work ethic a little bit.
One thing that I love that you said is that you love to be a part of those because you get to learn from your peers.
Right.
And that's super nice to hear from a business that's been around for decades, that you're still learning from your peers.
Gosh, I still have so much to learn, yeah.
I just love that. That's awesome.
I think that's a great mentality to have.
We try to tell people that all the time is it's so important just to don't look at them as competitors, but what can you learn from one another and how can you build each other up at the same time?
Well, and that is a unique thing about manufacturing in Montana is really none of us are competing with each other for maybe for employees.
I think everybody in every industry.
But as far as product wise and customer base, everybody's building something different, and so that's all different, and so you're not really competing on that level.
Yeah.
So you're more open to bringing people in and showing them what you're doing and trying to help them out or whatever. So
which is cool because you guys ship everywhere, so it's not even like Montana's your primary audience anyway. No. Businesses in Montana. Not that they're not probably buyers, but
as a little plug, we know that you're involved with our organization, Big Sky Economic Development, on our board, and we'd love to ask why you're involved, what value you get from being a board member with this organization. But first, we're going to hear a sponsor message from Big Sky Economic Development.
Thank you to Big Sky Economic Development for supporting the Vault at 201 North Broadway. Big Sky Economic Development provides leadership and resources for business creation, expansion, retention, new business recruitment, and community development.
All right, Bryan, coming back from our sponsor message, could you please tell us what the value is of being a part of any community organization, but specifically Big Sky Economic Development.
Yeah. Selfishly us.
Yeah.
Well, again, obviously, it just gives me the opportunity to associate with other business people in the community and learn a little bit about what's going on in the area. But Big Sky actually helped us out when we did our last edition. I mean, I didn't know anything about them at the time. I think Jones Construction did it, and Jerry Jones actually said, you should check into this, and Big Sky could help. Big Sky Economic Development could help you out. And
it's a mouthful. We get it.
I know. And so you guys did help us get some tax relief, some property tax relief on that. That edition, which was great because people don't realize. I mean, whenever you do, it's like when you build a house or do an addition, it always costs more than you expect, and you're stretched on your cash flow when you get done. And any little relief you can get for a while just helps you get over that hump. We very much appreciated that. So, and then Steve came to me and kind of said, "Well, would you be interested in being on our board?" I'm like, sure, but I don't think I really
commitment every month.
I don't know that I would really contribute that much, but I think it's probably better for me than I am for the board. But it wasn't until I got involved with the board that I realized the how broad a scope they have. There's how many things Big Sky Economic Development does, and I'm still learning that. But
we still learn that.
Yeah, I was like, sometimes
we do that. Okay.
Wow.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, it's really incredible. I think it's a great organization.
Oh, well, thank you for sharing that, and we're definitely happy to have you on our board. I think you contribute more than you think you do.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, Bryan, it's been so great having you with us here today on the podcast. We end each episode with 3 rapid fire questions. So I'll start. What's one of the best business tips you've ever received?
Oh, gosh, what's one of the best business tips I've ever received? And I still struggle with this, and not all business is good business. Because I it's just my nature. I want to help everybody and take everything on. And sometimes people have to pull the reins in on me a little bit. And fortunately, we have like a sales manager that's a little better about, saying, that's just not good business right there and stuff. So that's one of probably the things, because that's what I struggle with. That's some of the advice that's been good for me.
Thanks for sharing that.
I want to know, what gets you going in the morning? How do you start your day?
How do I start my day? Actually, I'm usually up for a couple hours before I go to work, because I just like to get up and be active in some way or another.
Yeah.
I'm not a person that stays up really late.
Me neither.
Me neither. Like 9 p.m. I'm done.
Yeah. So
what's one thing that gets you to relax or de-stress?
other than beer?
No, you can say beer. That's totally fine. What's your favorite brewery in town? Or, in the county?
Gosh, what's my favorite brewery? So I don't go out that much.
That's okay. You can just say what your favorite beer is, too.
Yeah. But I do enjoy once in a while just, going to, like, there's the new one, the Metal Arc Brewery, is, because if I do.
Montana?
Yeah.
Original?
Yep. And when I do go out, it's usually with my kids and grandkids, and that's very kid friendly.
Yeah, they have a playroom,
Yeah.
which you can just let your kids go and they have
Exactly.
things. It's really cool.
Yeah, so we enjoy that, and then of course Laurel has High Plains Brewery, and I don't get there enough. I enjoy going there more in the summer because you can sit outside and stuff. But
Absolutely.
what else? I guess that I should have taken that question more seriously.
No, it is very valid.
No, time with family probably as much as anything, and just being active and getting away from work helps a lot sometimes.
Yeah.
Awesome.
That's
I love
awesome.
it. I just wanted to, based on our conversation, I did have one final thought that I wanted to throw out to everybody, is no matter where you are, you could be up in Wolf Point, Montana. You can do big things. You can create industry-changing instruments and technology. So just go for it.
Yeah, that's right. I agree.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Brian. It's been great to have you.
Thank you so much.
Yep, appreciate it.
Thank you for joining. You can find the resources and tools mentioned in today's episode at thevault201.com. If you like this episode, be sure to subscribe and share with a friend.